Hello. Welcome to another World of Warships cruiser inspection. It's the San Diego baby. Probably one of like two tier 8 premium cruisers worth paying doubloons for. Can we say that? Can we say that? Can we also say fuck the Atago? San Diego over Atago all day, every day, no questions asked? Yeah, 100%. I'd say this is easily my favorite tier 8 cruiser in the game. Um, it's really, really, really fun, really strong. Able to play aggressive, which is how I like to play. Retarded bot, gameplay extraordinaire. You're here, you're watching it every day, twice a week. Who knows? Um, you have really, really, really solid DPM for this tier. You kind of have the highest DPM actually in all of tier 8. Not counting AP, right? Because you have SAP, so like your SAP is higher than anyone's HE DPM. Then you get this reload booster. Now, there's a lot of comparisons between San Diego and Austin. People thinking that San Diego is like better because the base DPM is higher. Just leaving out like a lot of factors that really matter. One, Austin has a bit better. These shell arcs are a bit worse than Austin. Another thing is that two of your 16 guns can never shoot at any given time, right? You have one turret on each of your sides here. So no matter what you're doing, at least one of your turrets can never shoot. So you kind of have to remove like 6%, 7% DPM for that. Austin's a bit better shell arcs. Austin's reload booster is probably like 5 times as good. It's not just that your buff is 75% instead of 33%. It's that these, you only get 3 of them. And I'm taking Superintendent, right? Austin is a ship that doesn't need Superintendent because it has 4 heals base, which is very cool. San Diego, you kind of want Superintendent. You have a really long reload on the reload boosters. They're buffing your DPM by 1/3, which is nice, but not like anything crazy. Your armor is thoroughly like ultralight cruiser armor, right? You do not do to battleships what Austin does, which is it bounces 99% of battleship shells in the game, right? This thing just blows the fuck up if battleships shoot at it. Now, San Diego kind of does to cruisers what Austin does to battleships, and I would say in the cruiser engagement, which is why you're kind of a very different type of ship. There's nothing to shoot at, so why not just cringe blind fire this guy in his smoke? And he's gonna leave. So we're gonna pop the reload booster. Definitely want to use it on destroyers, kind of like Austin. But you see the damage, like this kind of damage output on tier 8 is what's crazy. It's not that this ship rivals Austin like straight up. Austin's a 2 or 3 times better ship, but in tier 8, and we're even using the last little bit of that reload booster on this DD. So a nice little, a double DD kill. And this is kind of what I'm personally trying to do in San Diego. Basically every game is I'm trying to position very aggressively near an island. Very aggressively near an island. I am not trying to shoot these guns over rocks, right? I'm not trying to position near an island for cover to shoot. I'm trying to position near an island close to the cap so that I can pop out when destroyers are going to be spotted for 10 to 30 seconds and I can delete them, right? Now, tier for tier, is the ship better than Austin? I don't think that it's better than Austin. I think that it's different. It's probably about as good in tier 8 as Austin is in tier 10. But for very different reasons. Like, Austin has this crazy whack-a-mole ability with the insane reload booster. Austin has the crazy, like G-Nan, the 32mm armor plate to actually push battleships. And then San Diego is like the whole hull is basically paper, which is a very different playstyle. And the DPM is at its best. Like for its tier, it's great, but like, the comparison would be Austin with reload booster up has double the DPM of AP Minotaur, right? But it's SAP, right? So like that's kind of what we're at. And then San Diego with the booster up is still not as good even as like maybe Neptune, right? I think, or Edinburgh. I'm trying to remember what AP. Maybe Mines is the ship I'm thinking of that has like the demonic HE AP DPM, right? Like there are plenty of ships, cruisers in this tier that even when your reload booster is up, they theoretically have better DPM if they can use AP against things, right? And the other difference between this and Austin is that you have AP instead of HE, so you have SAP and AP. Now, I have a hot take. And my hot take is that if Austin had SAP and AP instead of HE and SAP, it would probably be considered one of the most overpowered ships in the game. And that's not to say that starting fires isn't good. Like, being able to start fires is good. But because this is destroyer caliber SAP that only pens 36, and on San Diego, your AP pen is actually, like, very respectable. Like, very surprisingly high pen on the AP. I want to say you retain, like, about 100 millimeters of AP pen, even out to 10 kilometers. So, like, most battleships that aren't, basically everything that's not German and Russian, you can use the AP to pen their upper belts. Even, like, Colombo with its 70 mil upper belt, right? Some things like Libertad, right, with their, that line with its 51 millimeter upper belt, Vermont, things like this. And then because the AP pen is so decent, you kind of start to Citadel light cruisers around, like, maybe about 7-8 kilometers. And you can actually Citadel quite a large number of heavy cruisers in, like, the 4 or 5 kilometer range in the San Diego. So while the HE is good on Austin, I actually overall kind of never miss it on San Diego because SAP is such a retarded ammo type to begin with. Like, you still typically are going to do more damage with SAP than HE plus fires. Now, the big difference on Austin and why maybe you would still want the HE is obviously Austin can face super ships, right? And if you're in an Austin fighting, like, a Satsuma, like, realistically, you're never going to kill it with SAP, right? So, like, you kind of need, a main, like, these ships with tons of HP and healing, like, you kind of have to go through fires to impact the game against them. But I don't think it's a downside. Basically, I don't think it's, like, objectively better to have the AP, although it's kind of 50-50. Like, there are so many times in Austin where I wish to God I had the AP, right? Like, Austin with AP, I think, would be considered, like, incredibly toxic because you have to remember that this AP on San Diego, you will Citadel of Des Moines at, like, honestly, man, I want to say 4 or 5 kilometers. Like, certainly 4, but maybe even about 5. About 4 or 5 kilometers, you're starting to Citadel Des Moines. So, like, if you get to push cruisers into San Diego and fight them super close, you really fuck on them. So, I want you to imagine, like, 1 million AP DPM Austin, but it can Citadel, right? Kind of crazy. But I would say overall, that's not a problem, not having the HE. Especially at this lower tier because the DPM is so good. Well, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get really close, really early, and whack-a-mole DDs. I'm trying to do the same thing in Austin, but Austin is inherently better at fighting battleships because it can stay open water more easily. I do play open water in this thing a bit, right? You're not that likely to blow up against tier 8 battleships, but you don't have the armor that Austin has, like, where you can literally not give a fuck at close range against enemy battleships. Very, very different. Yep, we're looking at 2 games. We're going to hop into game 2 right away. And I would like to draw your attention in this second replay to the enemy carrier, which is a Malta. Horrific, horrible, terrible, dog shit, poo-poo dipe. Now, we can talk about the AA on the San Diego. So, the San Diego, if we're again comparing it to Austin, has really kind of bad AA overall. It's kind of like maybe half as good. But if I hover over this DFAA, you will see that this does a 100% buff to your continuous. Most DFAA is 300% flak. That's the shell explosion damage, and 50% continuous. So, because this has 100% continuous on its AA, and the flak is not... the flak is worse than Austin, don't get me wrong. But it's not as bad compared to Austin as the DPS is. But with the DFAA up, the San Diego does have quite respectable AA. I would actually probably describe this as opportunity cost AA, even for something like a Malta. Like, yes, he can absolutely drop me. Yes, his bombs can Citadel me. Yes, if he's a good CV player, he can, like, 2 to 3 shot me with his AP dive bombers. But he is going to lose squadrons dropping something like a San Diego. And that is another really nice asset to have. Like, I know AA is a meme. I get it. Like, if a CV wants you dead, you will die. 100%. We're not trying to claim otherwise. But, like, and that's frustrating. I get it. But if you're in an AA build Austin, AA build San Diego, and a CV wants you dead, he's going to have to pay a heavy price to kill you. Whereas he could go drop your, Iparanga, your Key, right? He could go drop those ships basically for free. He can't really drop you for free. He's going to lose planes. So you're a nice deterrent, and that is another thing that's giving you game impact when you're bottom tier. I kind of mentioned in the Massachusetts review, if you watch that, how there's a lot of games where your damage output is never going to give you game impact because, like, you're against toxic tier 10s that shit on you, right? And it's like, realistically, like, you're Massachusetts against a Des Moines, like, 1,000 out of 1,000 times. If the Des Moines is as good of a player as you, he's killing you, right? But a nice little X factor that something like San Diego has, or like a lot of radar cruisers in Tier 8 have, is that they scale, they have, their utility scales just fine, right? Like having 10-kilometer radar in Tier 8, yeah, you're going to die easier and do less damage against Tier 10s, but like at the end of the day, it's a 10-kilometer radar that can win your team the game by radaring destroyers, right? At the end of the day, this DPM is really good. Even by Tier 10 standards, by the way, this is not bad DPM, right? I mean, you're probably somewhere around like the same SAP DPM as like the Regolo, which is quite good. And you're a cruiser, but you're also a Tier 8, right? But the AA is giving your team a big impact. So this position that I'm in, again, we're trying to take an aggressive position in case a DD tries to get the cap. But this is a really, really strong position in any AA ship on this map because of how this island works. Your CV wants to fly through the middle of the map typically on this map a lot of the time, because what tends to happen is ships really camp the 10 line and then they really camp spawn on the west flank. And the problem is that as a carrier, yes, you can, or a hybrid, you can go drop the 1-2 line, the 9-10 line, but your flight time is so long, like, you're not giving your team that much game impact from doing that. And then another thing is that ships, like you see here, they have this early access light cruiser with the airstrikes. This is another, like, very classic Golden Lion position. It's a very classic, like, Hildebrand, Louisiana, like, any hybrid position, right? And then, because of the nature of the island, the CV doesn't get vision on you until he flies over the rock. So, the CV kind of has to be in your AA before he's even getting vision. And so all of those things combined are leading you to be, like, incredibly game impactful if you have solid AA by just playing the central position on the east side of the sea island. Or on their team, the opposite, side of the rock, right, would be really good. Now, unfortunately, my carrier has literally zero. Remember when I just said, I just said that you want to spot middle on this map in the carrier because that's where the congestion happens. That's where the ships like to park. And you could drop the flanks, but it takes too long. Yeah, my CV doesn't want to spot. So this Orage is like right here, right? He's spotting me. If this CV just spots him, I'll kill him for free. But he's just not going to. I mean, spoiler alert, just one of those carrier players who would rather go drop something for 10,000, 100% meaningless, irrelevant damage than get their only destroyer who's centrally positioned killed. It happens, There's nothing you can do about it, but I'm still going to stay here, right? Like, even though he's not going to help me, because this is a small cap. You see on the mini-map, the 7-kilometer range of my airstrikes. The Orage only has about 6-kilometer concealment, so I can use this island to pop out, and I will detect him, right? I can do it myself. Obviously, I would prefer if the CV spotted him when he's, like, flat broadside and he's a free kill. But, he'd rather go drop, again, meaningless damage over here on rock campers. Kind of unfortunate, but that is the state of most retards that play carriers. It is what it is. But so he's on the cap, and you see you see the 7-kilometer line, so I can just walk out and shoot this guy, right? This is obviously a situation where, like, Austin would have just killed this guy. Like, there's no living this ever in an Austin. Whereas, because you don't have HE, this is one of the very few times where it can be an issue. Because these saps shells do have about the same pen angles as like daring AP. So you're not like guaranteed pens, right? And the slower reload, I mean, yeah, it's a tier 10, but Austin would have killed that guy. No questions asked. 1,000,000,000% guaranteed. He's dead to Austin. DDs don't guaranteed die to this thing. You do crazy damage to them, and if they're caught like broadside, they will die to this thing. But it's not like guaranteed, like it would be in an Austin where we could just load the HE and we're firing every like 2 seconds at him, right? So he gets away, but you know, still good damage. You know, he kind of only gets away because our CV's a retard, but again, it happens. So I'm just, you know, again trying to back up, but we've got the DFAA up, and you see like the continuous damage with the DFA up is really not that bad. Now, obviously, like he can still drop me, right? I'm kind of getting blessed that he's either trash or he's getting really fucked in his bomb dispersion. But like the DFAA is giving you, like I say, opportunity cost, right? Because he started this flight with mostly a full squadron, and he gets one drop, and then before he can drop a second time, he kind of loses all his planes. So that's a really good way to find game impact in a lot of these ships. And that's why, you know, like, just another reason why I kind of just say, like, this over Atago is, like Atago does not scale, like, right? I mean, like, Atago has, like, respectable salvo weight and, like, accurate guns and okay damage output. Really the main reason that people love Atago, whether they will admit it or not, is that it's one of the trolliest ships in the game to punish when it goes flat. So this Kutuzov did something that I just really didn't expect him to do. If I'm being perfectly honest, I figured he would park on the island in front of the, you know, the Ipiranga. So he's not going to do that. And he actually has the intelligence to shoot AP, so that's quite unfortunate. And then the reason why I stopped shooting is I thought I would go dark, but the black is up my ass, so that's not going to happen. So, you know, this guy started this fight on, like, 35,000 to, you know, basically because of his AP volley, like, a 15k HP. And, yeah, if he didn't have help, I would have killed him here. Like, that is kind of, like, how good the San Diego's DPM is, even compared to other ships that are renowned for good damage output, like Kutuzov. You know, if he didn't have his teammate hitting me for that 10k salvo, he very likely gets traded there at minimum. But, you know, this ship, I really value cruisers that can be played aggressively. You know, if you watch this channel, it's kind of like, I don't really care if a cruiser is good. It's why, like, I don't give a shit about Lighthouse Henry. You know, it's why I like Lighthouse Venezia and Lighthouse Goliath, but I don't give a shit about Lighthouse Henry, is because, like, this is the game impact, right? I didn't do crazy damage. 100k is, like, solid for a tier 8 cruiser, obviously. But, you know, we took most of the DD's health, right? We took most of the DD's health. But then we shot down 22 planes, which really obviously helps the team. And that is, like, a very crucial thing to have going for you when you're bottom tier, is you need to have an ability in a bottom tier ship to impact the game in a way that is not just out damaging people that are, like, right, like, out trading your ship. So, like, whether that's, you know, something like a Cossack, right? Because even in a top tier lobby, Cossack still outspots all the enemy DDs, right? It can still hunt and kill the enemy torp boats, right? And then outspot and just keep spotted the enemy gunboats. A ship like Massachusetts, well, now I mentioned that, you know, Monarch's better at this, but ships like Monarch, Massachusetts, they can impact the game via absorbing damage, right? So San Diego does not have utility in the typical cruiser role, right? And by that I mean you don't have, like, a long range hydro or a radar. You don't have vision utility for your team, right? You have pretty good damage output, very good for the tier, but in a tier 10 lobby, this damage output isn't really doing much. But in these CV lobbies, that is, like, a really nice kind of X factor to have to impact the game. Because people, like, want to go for you, right? You're a squishy light cruiser with no HP. You're a free kill. Yes, they will always drop you at least once, but you will shoot down quite a lot of planes. Um, and having that ability, I do think is like very underrated on this ship. Is it like god tier AA like DFAA, AA spec Austin? No, it's not quite on that level, but especially against like tier A carriers, like you basically cannot drop this thing in a tier A carrier with DFAA up, right? And I mean, the Malta is renowned for being one of the most bullshit CVs in the game because it has way too many planes per squadron with too much HP. So it always gets drops off, and like even the Malta you can see is basically sacrificing a squadron to drop me once. Um, so, the first replay, it's kind of what I'm trying to do, right? Where I played on an island and then I whack a mole DDs, pushed up against a battleship, right? Playing very aggressive. This is kind of like what you're probably going to have to do in a lot of games when you're bottom tiered in this thing, or really any tier 8 cruiser. Um, to me, that's a big reason why, like, I'll probably look at it at some point, but I do think like the Atago hype exists from a period of time where it was like one of the only tier 8 cruisers in the game with a heal, and by default it felt so much better to play because it just had that heal. And then it's the fact that the hull, it's one of the trolliest cruiser hulls in the game. Like legitimately, Atago is more troll to punish when it's flat than like Petro, but people just like circle jerk over Petro. But like realistically, that thing is like never blowing up flat. Um, but to me, the San Diego is a way more fun ship than something like Atago, just straight up. Number one, it has higher game impact if you're good at playing cruisers. It just straight up has higher game impact because the DPM is way higher. It has utility in the form of AA. It can actually kill destroyers. It can do a lot of these other things that impact the game because, realistically speaking, especially in a ship without HE, but even in a ship with decent HE, it's like you're not really farming your way to victory when you're bottom tier in most cruisers. You're typically speaking going to have to find a way to impact the game that is right. Like this is not like if I had this damage in Des Moines, I would be like, what a shitty this would be a horrible game in Des Moines. This would be a horrible game in the Zao, right? This would be a very, very mediocre shit game in basically any tier 10 crew. Even in the Austin, I'd be like, damn, only 100k damage, using sap only or something, like, right? Like Minotaur, any of these ships in tier 10, even the ones that can't start fires really, that would be a horrible game, just damage wise, right? You're not going to impact the game by like farming 250k in the San Diego and like solo killing like a Yamato and 2 cruisers and 2 DDs. Like that's not happening. But it's the game impact when you play aggressively that is going to happen. Okay, equipment. I don't think there's really anything you would change here unless you want coal modules. So like the coal hydro or the coal DFAA module, that's fine. Obviously, I think prop mod is like kind of 100% the fucking play, because I mean you have a god tier turning circle. Like we could talk about that too, but the rudder shift is already 7 seconds. So like, are you with 610 turning and 7-3 rudder? Are you really going to turn faster if this is now 6? Not really. I would much rather have prop mod on this thing personally. Also, you don't have the armor. Austin's one of the very few cruisers I sometimes take rudder shift on because part of how you juke damage is turning in and bouncing off the plating. Can't do that in this, so that's off the table anyway. Captain speaking, it's a bit unfortunate compared to Austin because on Austin, what you would do is you would drop incoming fire alert and superintendent for the DFA for the AA skill. That's what I run at least because you get 4 heals base in the Austin unlimited reload booster, so you kind of don't really get that much value out of superintendent at all. This ship, the reload booster is limited. You only get 2 if you don't take this, so that's kind of shit. If the game lasts for like 10 minutes, you need that third one. But I'd say all this is like objective correct. There's no point fire chance, obviously. I would say overall, this is probably the build. This is mostly just getting that reload booster back faster overall. You don't really, in my opinion, have any value in these because the reload time is so short and the turret traverse time is like, 7 seconds. You notice I didn't even mention the torpedoes in that review because We tried to use them in the first game, but they're basically YOLO torps or defensive torps, right? They're kind of like not even really Fletcher torps, right? They do a bit less damage, but they only go 4.5, so they're thoroughly like just YOLO shit them out torps or rush torps. So I'd say overall this is probably the build. I mean, you could trade the AA skill for PT, but I mean, you know me, I'm a PT hater. There's no point in any of these, so it would just be swapping really AA for this. It's kind of nothing else like really worth taking. Now you could drop like these two skills to grab PT if you really wanted to, but I don't think it matters all that much. Armor wise, it's kind of paper against battleships specifically. You're, in Atlanta, Genan, Austin, Hull, basically, except, this part on Austin and Genan is 32, and on this it's still 16. So, basically, every battleship in the game is going to overmatch you. The Citadel, especially in the front, do be out of the water. It's only 89, which, of course, what does that mean? Well, that means that 380 millimeter sap, Colombo, even the tier 8 and 9 will Citadel you with sap. 3 Colombo shells, you go back to port. That's probably the number one scariest ship to fight in the San Diego because you can't pen its upper belt with sap. Can't let it on fire. It has a ton of HP. And if you just do this, that much angle, Colombo blows you up. Pretty suffering. But, the armor is very good against cruisers, especially at its tier. And that is why the San Diego, to me, is... I don't want to, firmly commit to it being the best tier 8 cruiser in the game. But to me, it's definitely, a top 3 or 4. Because there's no cruiser that can kill this thing. You push in against basically any cruiser in tier 8... and you have effectively 50% plus better damage output. You have a heal they typically don't. I played a third game today and I fought an Atago 1v1 and basically outdamaged him 40 to 10k because the DPM on this thing is so crazy for its tier. You can't really stress enough in tier 8 how crazy with the build having 300 plus thousand sap DPM is, right? Because you are because you're taking heavy sap on the captain, right? So base, this thing has maybe 275-ish thousand sap DPM, and then you take that and you're over 300k. So you have 300k sap DPM, which is bananas in tier 8, obviously. So this thing is a demon in ranked. If you enjoy playing light cruisers aggressively like I do, you enjoy playing cruisers aggressively in general, I think this thing is good in all 3 game modes. Atago is undeniably a strong cruiser in randoms. Kind of griefing your team to play it in ranked, if we're being honest. Kind of griefing your team to play it in clan battles most of the time. San Diego is I would argue for how I, an aggressive bot, enjoy playing the game. Better than, as good or better than Atago in randoms, way better in ranked, and I would rather play it in clan battles as well when those are tier 8. It's just a really, really good ship. Yeah, you have to work around having no armor to battleships. But then again, let's be honest, if you're a cruiser masochist, do you really have armor against battleships, right? Unless you're in Petro Napoli. Do you really have armor against BBs anyway? No, not really. The important thing with this over Atlanta is that it has 16, right? So it's not quite an Atlanta hull. Atlanta is 13 here. So 203 millimeter cruisers eat Atlanta's shit. And this is very resilient against tier 8 cruisers. That's kind of where it's really the specialist is most of the cruisers that you fight in tier 8, 1, don't have a heal, 2, don't overmatch you, 3, you have double their DPM, right? So you just brutalize a lot of the cruisers in your tier. And then obviously you're very good against destroyers. You can get these 7, 8k salvos against them like Austin can. It's a really good ship. I think I want to say that in the armor right now it's one of the 3 ships that you can use like the Black Friday discount coupon on, right? I think. But I think the other one's Cossack. I mean, Cossack's definitely better than this. But San Diego, of all the tier 8 cruisers in the game that I would get, like if I had to do it over, I would probably get this one first, ahead of like even Mines and Atago. I really would. I admit though that a bit of that is playstyle, so some of that is down to playstyle, undeniably. But it's fun. It's unique for its tier. I mean, very unique. Unique, fun, strong. Can impact the game even when bottom tier. Just a really good cruiser overall. All right, that'll do it. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.